Informative Fisherman, and today we're going to be discussing a brief introduction to fishing and what it's going to take for you to become a successful angler. Okay, let's start off and let's talk a little bit about fishing rods and reels. There's a lot of rods on the market. Let's just discuss a few. You got spinning rods, bait casting rods, surf rods, deep sea rods, pulley rods, fly rods, ultralight rods, but let's not get caught up with all that. Let's just talk about two basic rods that we can get you started catching fish with. And those two rods are your basic spinning rod and your surf rod. Okay, here we have your basic spinning rod. And what I suggest for you is when you're fishing for fish up to 6 or 7 pounds or under, using the basic spinning rod. These rods come in a variety of different lengths. You can get them all sorts of different sizes, but when you get started, I suggest you use a 6-footer. Now how this rod works is you can trap the line right here with your finger. You open this part up, and this is actually called the bail. You make your momentum backwards, and as you go forward, you release your finger right there, and the line will go out, land on the water. You can either start to reel, and it'll automatically close your bail, or you can close it with your hand, whatever your preference is. Now the line on these, I suggest when you get started using 6 to 8 pound tests. And what test means is just your line strength. How hard you pull it, is where it snaps. So if you have 8 pound, you should put about 8 pounds of pressure on there before it snaps. These rods are used in fresh water and salt water. The only thing you want to remember is if you use this in salt water, as soon as you get it home, rinse it off in the hose real thoroughly. You don't want the salt getting down into your fine mechanics of the rod. Now to figure out if you're using the right reel and the right rod, if you look closely on your reel, you can see, let me try to show you here, you can see there's a lot of little writing on there, and those are the specs. And it'll show you what your reel supports, how strong of line or how weak of line. And the same thing with your rod. If you look on the base of your rod, right in here, it'll show you. It'll show you the exact specs you need. So most 6-foot basic spinning rods you grab will be just fine. They'll support 6 to 8 pound tests. Okay, now here we have a surf rod. Now what the surf rod is just an upscaled version of your basic spinning rod. It's longer. The reel's bigger, it can hold heavier test lines, so stronger line. What I suggest for weight for fish, when you're fishing for fish over 6 pounds and up to 100 pounds, you can use a surf rod. A surf rod's a very versatile rod. It casts the same way as your basic spinning rod. It's just for using heavier tackle, heavier weights, larger bait, and for catching larger fish. Now the length of the rod I suggest for a surf rod for a beginner, you can either buy a 7-footer, anything in between 7 foot or 10 foot long. And the reel should support 10 to 17 pound test line. And like I discussed earlier, that's the line strength. And just get monofilament, just like your basic spinning rod. But we're going to use a monofilament for these guys. And when you spool it up, I suggest using 14 pound test monofilament line. Trilene makes good line, but any line you want to choose is fine. And when I say spooling it up, that just means putting the line onto your spool. That's spooling it up. Okay, now let's discuss drag. What drag is how hard the fish has to pull to release the line off of your reel without breaking your line. This is very important for some fish out there. They pull extremely hard, and no matter the size of the fish, there's still a potential that they can break your line. So you always want to keep a good eye on your drag. Now to make it easier for the fish to pull off the line, you turn the knob to the left. These little drag systems on spinning rods and spinning reels are usually right on the very top of the reel. By turning it to the left, you loosen it. By to the right, you tighten it. So it's very important to get used to using your drag. If you don't, you're setting yourself up for failure. So basically just get it enough to where you have to give it a good pull to release the line. And you'll realize after time how important your drag is. But remember to pay attention to it. Now let's discuss some fishing tackle, some very basic fishing tackle. Here is your standard hook. It's a very standard hook. Hooks start off in size 32, ranging all the way down to 2. 32 being the smallest, and 2 being the largest in the first category. Once you get down to number 1, it becomes 1/0, and that's a very large hook. Then 2/0. It's a much larger hook, then 4/0, then 6/0, and that goes all the way up to 16. Here we have a treble hook. This is just a little different design. This is 3 hooks in one. It's a lot easier to hook a fish with these guys, even though you do not get as deep as a hook set if you were just to use a regular standard hook. Here we have a slider, and what a slider is for is like your line runs through the body of it right here, and you hook a weight right onto the side, so when a fish pulls on your hook, there's no tension. The fish doesn't feel any friction at all. The line slides through there, so you feel the bite, he doesn't feel the weight, and that keeps your line right down there on the bottom. Here we have your basic round weight. These guys are commonly used in lakes depending on how deep, or if the water's moving a little bit, you'll use a little heavier weight, or if it's shallower and the water's not moving, you can use a much lighter weight. Here we have a pyramid weight. Now what these guys are primarily used for is when there's muddy bottoms and you're fishing in a river and the water's moving quite a bit. This point, when the weight hits the water and lands in, it sticks itself down into the mud, so it keeps it hooked down there on the bottom, which is perfect when the water... This is a snap swivel. What a snap swivel is for, this ties onto your line right here. The head of this pops open, and you can get a pre-snailed hook. And pre-snailed hooks are hooks that come in a package, and they already have a line attached to them with a little loop at the end. And you toss a little loop over this guy, and you clip it shut. And that's a snap swivel. This is your traditional round bobber. You push the top down, you put your line under this guy, you push the bottom out, and that little piece comes out there, and you stick the line through there, and it hangs onto your line, and it keeps your bait afloat so you can fish mid-depth. Okay, now let's discuss the basic tools that every fisherman needs to bring with him. One of the most important things that every fisherman needs is a good pair of needle nose pliers. What happens lots of the time, the fish will take the hook too deep in his mouth, and you can't reach in there to pop it loose. Needle nose can really save the day. Next from there, you always want a net. Sometimes I get lazy and forget to bring the net myself, and I have lost a few really nice fish because I was lazy and didn't want to bring the net. Get a good net. What I like to do on my net, sometimes I'll mark like the size of the type of fish that I'm fishing for with the net, be it 18 inches when I'm fishing for striped bass. Make sure the net is big enough to handle the type of fish you're going for. Next from there, you want to have a good little knife with you. To cut bait, to cut lines, a knife always comes in really handy. So don't forget your knife. From there, you're going to want a tape measure. The type of fish you're fishing for could have a regulation on the size. You definitely want to know if you got a keeper or not. So make sure you have a tape measure with you. You don't want to let yourself down and not get to bring the fish home because you didn't know the size, or you grab one undersized and the sheriff comes after you and you have to pay a hefty fine. So don't do that. Next from there, always have a good little pair of clippers, just like fingernail clippers. Rapala makes this one really nice, convenient, with a little straight edge on them, and they have another little spot for popping clams open. Always have your tweezers. Come in extremely handy. Every time I go fish, I always need a pair of tweezers. These ones have a nice little neck thing around them, so that's really convenient. And one other thing, you're always going to want to have a bucket or a stringer to keep your fish on, or a big bag. If you're just going to keep them, toss them in a big bag. You don't want them laying out on the ground where seagulls can get them or other animals will run up and grab them. Trust me, it happens. It happens more than you want to know. One more thing from there, you always want to have a good rag with you, because your hands are going to get funky. You're always going to want to clean that bait off your hands. So have a nice big bait rag with you. Okay, now you're ready to get started. Now all you have to do is find out the spot that you want to fish. You have to find the type of fish that you want to catch so you can see what type of fish are there. It's important to find out what the fish feeds on, what they like to eat, so you can select the proper bait for that fish. The hook size is very important. Once you know the type of fish, you can look up the hook size that most people catch them on quite easily. You want to know if they're a bottom feeder or a top feeder. If you would like to find out, if that type of fish is a bottom feeder or a top feeder, you just research the fish. You can type it in on the internet, type the type of fish if I don't already have a video made. If the fish is a bottom feeder, you find out, you can look up my video, Beginner Catfishing, and a catfish is a bottom fish. And I will show you on that video the proper rig, how to set it up, the right hook size, and everything you'll need. If you find out the fish is a mid-depth feeder, or if they feed off the top, you can look up my beginner video, Beginner Bluegill Fishing, and that'll teach you how to use a bobber rig, which floats at mid-depth, or you can bring it up real high to the top of the water to catch those type of fish. I'm your host, Nick the Informative Fisherman, and we'll see you next time. Yes. Fishermen introduction